Welcome, everyone, to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, as always. Today, I have a really neat thing to share with you, and it's a conversation with one of my guides. The guide that's coming through today is Shaham. He's an Arcturian. He's this beautiful, wise soul. Um, he is someone that has, when he first showed up as part of my council, before I met him fully, he spent a lot of time observing me. And then when he finally kind of came in to speak, he has this beautiful sort of fatherly scholar type energy that I just absolutely love. It's this beautiful divine masculine scholar. He's wise, wise, wise. And so what was interesting is this morning I was kind of having conversations with him about humanity and people and then it was interesting, this invitation from him to share this conversation with all of you as it's happening. So basically, it was like to pause the conversation, hit record here, and share it. So, what I'm really interested is to see where things go. Again, I'm going to ask him questions and I'm going to share the responses I get from him. So, it's this live, sort of channeled conversation to share with all of you. And I'm very excited to do this. So, I'm going to bring Shaham forward. And one of the questions that I was talking to him about just before I started to hit record was the plight of humanity. So I was asking him, why is Earth so hard? I'm like, we understand that Earth is a spirit school, a wonderful place to come to learn through polarity and duality and the highs and lows and the emotions and all of that. And so I'd asked him, I said, why is it so hard though? And his answer, and I'll ask him to come forward too to carry on from this point here. The first part of his answer was that one of the things that's important to remember is that the idea that souls come here as a punishment is so incredibly false. He says that Earth has been increasing its frequency and awakening many times over. And many times over, it hasn't quite reached the crescendo where it could tip over into this new flow of higher consciousness that's like permanent. It would kind of fall back on itself. It's kind of like a wave he's showing me this wave that's trying to crest over this ledge to pour into a new area. But what happens is every time it gets up high and it gets up high, but then it folds back over on itself and goes back into the same kind of container. It's like we're trying to stretch into a bigger container. And he says, it's the desire of Earth and the desire of the souls that feel a connection to Earth that continue to come back here over and over. So my question for him then is, well, what about the idea that we are stuck sometimes, some people are stuck in karmic loops that keep bringing them back here? And he's telling me that that is a part of it, but it's actually a smaller fraction than what we think. The karmic bondage, as he's calling it, is actually much less than what we think. It truly comes back to conscious choices of the individual soul in their soul journey. That is why they choose to come back. And he's also saying, he's like, remember, some of you are star seeds, souls that have spent more time off planet Earth than on planet Earth that are here to help with this great change. So many of you listening might have experiences in other galaxies, perhaps other universes, other planetary systems. And you've come to Earth now, or maybe a couple times over, to be ready for this time and change and transformation. But there are other souls that are predominantly Earth souls. So just as you may have originated from another planet, there are souls that once they split off from Source, they decided to incarnate on Earth and be that deep Earth frequency. These ancient master teachers. And we find a lot of those souls in indigenous cultures that are really connected into the land. And so he's like, this idea that karmic loops pull you back over and over and over, he said, is not quite accurate. The soul, your soul, when you choose to incarnate somewhere else, chooses where it can best either serve or where it can best heal or mend something. And sometimes that is the karmic loop that does happen on this planet. And he says, the reason why is one of the biggest limiters. I was going to say a downfall, but he says no, one of the biggest limiters for humans in this incarnation is the great forgetting. Because we come into a third dimensional density, we come into a forgetting density, and that is our biggest limiter. Our biggest challenge is coming back to remembering that we are more than just a human body, that we are more than just this incarnation, that we are connected to more things, that we are connected to multiple universes and galaxies and lifetimes and consciousness and energy, and that it's all connected. We forget all of this. And the teachings on our planet right now don't nurture this. So we come in as these brand new babies, really connected to the other side and our higher frequencies and energies, but there isn't anything that nurtures that knowledge. And so it dissipates, and he's showing it kind of like closes down. Like, when you see sort of like a funnel that like closes down to the center. And he says there's a process on earth about remembering what we know, where we open that back up again. He said, but what's really changing now, though, is with all of those of you listening that have opened this back up again and are remembering these facets of your consciousness, your connection to all things, you are holding this open for the new generations to come in, which are coming in with a higher frequency, and they are able to keep their consciousness open, which means that they will be much greater conduits for this knowledge moving forward. So he's like, that's why we're in such a beautiful transformational time from their perspective, as challenging as it is. From their perspective, this time that we're in now, it's like almost like this new time frame, this new window of opportunity has greatly shifted. And a lot of it shifted, he's saying, from 2020 to 2024. Like we said, there'd be that 100 years worth of growth in consciousness. A lot of it shifted that so that we are now in this new window of opportunity. And he's saying this new window of opportunity, which is it's like we closed one door. Okay, he's showing me this imagery. So in 2020, we opened this door, we walked in, and it was like a corridor. From 2020 to 2024, we were crossing that corridor to the next door. And we got through that next door and we've closed it. And now we're in this new, okay? That's this new. And he said these next 3 years are us discovering what this new is, which is why we are radically changing how we think and how we feel about everything. Even our concepts of trauma. What was past trauma, we're now starting to transform into our wisdom. And we're starting to see it differently. And therapies are going to continue to change as this changes. Even he's saying the concept of talk therapy, which I think is fascinating and, very significant. He's saying that's also going to change too, though, because the speed at which our consciousness is shifting, we're transmuting past traumas in a completely different way now with this higher frequency. So he's saying this limiter of the great forgetting is also transforming. And so he's like, the way in which many people on earth view suffering, the suffering really occurs because of their lack of knowledge of the more, which is part of the plight of being human. He said, but that is what is changing. This concept is completely changing, which changes our perception of suffering. So he's saying if you were to look back, like if we were to go 20 years ahead and then look back at this time, we would see how significantly transformative it is, how our consciousness is so different. And he's showing me it's the same way that if we look back 20 years ago and we look at, what things were okay then and the way in which we view them differently now, like we would never say certain words or classify certain groups in certain ways. Now we just would not. Back then it just was, but now it's not. It's that same idea that 20 years from now we'll look back and the way in which we viewed suffering now will be very much transformed because of all the work that everybody on the individual level is doing right now. So then my next my next question to him then is, what about all this strife that we're seeing on, the political level and the world scale. Like, what about that? We know there's a transformation happening in the individual, but what about the transformation happening on that level? How sometimes I think as the individual, we feel so removed from it. Like, what can I possibly do? I just have to watch this unfold. What is happening on that level? That's what I'm going to ask him. So just hold on here. Okay, so he's saying this is where we told you, I think it was in the January. He's showing me either January, around that time, December, January energy update, or it might have been cosmic consciousness. He says, we brought through the information for all of you that there were people in positions of power who were standing as these guideposts to renegotiate the whole structure. And so again, he's like, if you look 20 years from now and look back, you'll see how transformative this time is. He's showing it to me. He's comparing it to like when the Berlin Wall fell, how transformative that action was. It was this crumbling. It's that same sort of idea. And there's people in positions of power that are these strong, sturdy columns for which it is being rebuilt. But the destruction, though, that has to happen first often throws people off, right? It's like when you want to build a house, first you have to tear down the old house. And then when you think the old house is torn down, you realize how much cleanup there is. And then you have to actually change the foundation. You actually have to like dig it out again. So you think like, okay, there couldn't possibly be more destruction because they already brought the wrecking ball in. They brought the different machines to clear out all the debris, but now they're digging deeper. Like, what the heck? And it's so to create an entirely new foundation. But within that, he's saying there are already people of higher consciousness that are holding the frequencies for this recreation that is happening. He says there's so much more happening that we don't see that is helping to realign this. He's also saying, don't forget too, that part of evolution requires trial and error. So even though consciousness is taking us in the right direction, there still is trial and error. It's not a perfect trajectory. There's trial and error of what works at the right time. And he's saying he's like, we could even give you all, meaning humanity, some of the highest technologies of things. He's like, but the thing is if it falls into the wrong hands or is misunderstood, it would cause more issue than good. He's like, so as with all things need to evolve in order to be understood. And he said the same thing goes for knowledge. So now he's bringing me to the idea of, past lives and understanding our traumas and understanding spirit. Like, if you're like me, you want to know everything, right? I want to know all of the things from spirit. I want to know them all. How does this work? How does this work? How does this work? He's saying if we gave you all the information, it would be an overload to your consciousness. They have to give information in the state of evolution in which we're at. And there are individual states of evolution, and then there are collective states of evolution. He's like, so we can give to the collective a certain amount at a certain time. We can give to the individual at a certain amount at a certain time. But we could not just give all of the information. And he's reminding me, he's like, imagine if you were given everything you understand now about consciousness in the very beginning of your journey. And I mean, yeah, that would completely overwhelm me. I remember when I went to Egypt, I can't remember which time, I've been many times, but I remember I stood by the Sekhmet statue, which is this lion-headed goddess. And I'll talk about this more in Cosmic Consciousness next week. Actually, that'll be this week by the time you're listening to this. So on Wednesday, the 16th, I'll be talking about this in Cosmic Consciousness. When I stood by Sekhmet and I put my hand on her, the information that flowed through my mind was all about creation. And it was so much, my mind couldn't handle all of it. I remember I had my hand on her arm, the statue's arm, and the information was so overwhelming, it actually took me to my knees, but I wouldn't let go because my mind was like, I want to know more, I want to know more. And she kept funneling more, but I couldn't handle it. It's like there wasn't space for it all. And I remember I spent the rest of the day almost in this sort of like semi-comatose state of just like, I don't know. I don't know. Like I couldn't speak. I couldn't put words together. It took me a while to pull it all together. And then it took years of understanding snippets of what I saw to make sense of the concepts of creation. And I still don't have it all. And so it makes a lot of sense. Like even that moment where they deemed I was ready to receive this was so much for my consciousness. So again, if spirit was to give all of the technologies, all of the understandings right now, it would be too much for our brain. It would ruin the evolution. It would take that wave that's growing and growing and growing and just flatten it, right? It would be too much. So as much as we desire to know more, patience is such a virtue. Patience is one of the greatest lessons all of us humans will have to learn in terms of spiritual evolution. There is a patience to it. There's an integration time and there's a natural flow of events. And that force is the absolute opposite of flow. And the universe wants to flow, not be forced. So we can't force it. Oh, which is such a lesson. So true. So true. Okay, so then my next question to Shaham is how soon are we going to see or experience true like disclosure of ETs, like a landing or this, that, or whatever? I just want to see what he has to say about that. Okay, so he's saying it's already happening in various different ways to various different groups in various different ways. He's saying some of the ships that we're seeing in the sky are accurate, are true. Some of them are not, meaning they are most likely fabricated from Earth, taking ET technology and recreating it. But he said there are many that are valid. There are many things happening that is valid. And he said this is where we keep bringing the messages of discernment, use your discernment to feel what is valid, what isn't. He said disclosure is happening between the higher levels of consciousness and the individuals on a daily basis. So, like we've been saying, tuning into your guides, all the things I've been talking about in the messages, especially last week. He is saying, though, that there are already groups of people at different levels. And the different levels he's telling me are like different echelons of power. So again, kind of those columns that I was talking about, people that hold up those positions of power, they are already in connection, in conversation with different galactic beings. They already are. And this is really significant so that they can help to control the fate of planet Earth to prevent that sort of mass extinction event again, whether that be through nuclear war or war in general, different things like that. They're like, planet Earth is not willing to go backwards because again, the consciousness of planet Earth is also a entity consciousness. So he's saying that is already happening. But I keep asking him, but what, like, when will we see this? And he said, we hope for sooner than later. He said, there's a divine timing that needs to happen. There needs to be, interesting, this energetic point in the collective in which this can be. And he shows it to me like a snapping of an elastic, like our consciousness is being expanded, 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 and at one point it will snap. And when it snaps is when we have that elasticity to understand and receive their disclosure, them showing up. And we're almost at that point of snapping. Which is interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that imagery. Okay, so because I was like, you won't give me like dates or times. And you said, again, this is when patience comes in. He says it's not about a date or a time. He said we could try to align it with a particular planetary alignment, a moon cycle. He said, but it's not about that. It's about that flow. And again, that point in which humanity is ready. There's a big enough proportion of the consciousness that is ready. Because otherwise, again, it will go into that mass pandemonium where it's too much for the brain, kind of like I experienced in Egypt. So that's a fair point. Okay, my next question for him is there anything he wants us to know right now? And I'm going to leave it really open like that. Anything he wants us to know right now. So just hold on here. He's showing me, when you see oil on water and how when you first hit the oil on the water, all the kind of bubbles disperse, but then they start to come back together and form bigger and bigger bubbles. He said many of you are going through these regroupings of your soul units. He's saying your soul families, I'll call it a soul unit. Basically, when you break off from source energy and you agree to take on a certain soul journey, I'm talking about the bigger soul journey. So whether you originated from another planet or star system or you originated on Earth, you kind of begin with a soul unit. People say it's a soul family. He's saying many are reconfiguring or coming back together at this time, and it is not limited to your soul family simply on Earth. You are pulling together with your soul family on Earth right now, so you'll find your relationships are likely changing or have changed. You're reconnecting with different people, feeling these soul bonds. That's purposeful, reorganizing, kind of clumping of higher frequency soul units. He's saying, but it's not limited to just Earth beings. There's also the galactic beings and also some that are coming in spirit as well, are coming close, which is why we're getting that kind of multifaceted, multidimensional awareness. He's saying this is coming back for a reason because again, he's saying it helps to propagate more of the like. So meaning it pulls more together, right? I guess it's kind of like the law of attraction. It draws more of your soul family together to make greater units of frequency consciousness at various spots on our planet. Yeah, because he's saying what happens is then those soul groupings act as beacons. So when you have, say, like a soul sisterhood, a soul brotherhood, a soul family, however you want to see it, and you gather together, whether it's in person or just in conversation, what you're doing is you're kind of whirling the waters of that consciousness. You're stirring them up a little bit so they're more active. That creates this light beacon energy. And as people are doing that around the world, it's creating this greater connectivity around the world of higher frequency. And he's saying that's so pivotal for this time. And he's saying what's really different about this time in our awakening and evolution versus the other times before when we've had like the great floods or different massive extinctions. He said is at those times, we weren't as connected in with our full soul families as we are now, as we're in the process of doing now. He's saying before there would be kind of like one or two godlike energies that people would look towards. But what's happening now is we're recognizing that source, God, creator energy within all of us, how it runs through all of us, and it runs through our soul units, and it runs through the multidimensional nature of self. And that is what is making it different. It's creating an entirely different grid around the planet. It's like comparing a school chain link fence would be like the old version to now that chain link armor on a knight. It's a much tighter weave, right? Much stronger, much tighter, much more resilient and resistant than a school chain link fence. So he said there's great purpose in this because this is what is giving the stability for this transformation. But he's saying what's hard then, if we go back to the concept of suffering, is in order for everybody to get to this point, to draw their soul family together, so much healing has had to happen in such a short amount of time. Such a short amount of time. And he's bringing me back to 2020 to 2024. And the healing, yes, it has started long before that. But there was such a high intensity of healing that just like pushed us all through this gauntlet at that time. In order for it to be transformed in a different modality of healing now, he's saying this is what allows this tighter weave of kind of this chain armor that makes us more impenetrable to any darker energies, dark forces that want to manipulate this significant time of transformation on the planet, which I think is so cool. It's a really neat visual. So that makes a lot of sense. So I have another question for him, which is, Will there be people now then that will be able to communicate, travel, visit the galactics in a much more profound way? And he's already answering. He's like, oh, yes, absolutely, yes, absolutely, yes. He's like, as you transcend the limitations of your reality and embrace the multidimensional realities, like I keep saying, he's like, that is absolutely possible, either through astral connections and astral travels, through meditation, through teleportation. Um, that's why our bodies are coming online so that we can be much more malleable to different densities and dimensions. He's saying this will show itself in how fast all of you, on a very sort of 3D, we could say 3D flat, 5D level, um, will see the shift in how we traverse space so much faster as a nation, right? Like going to Mars will happen a lot faster than probably what we think. He's saying those are the ways you will see it on that aspect, but on another aspect, the body will not be as big of a limitation as we perceive it to be right now. Again, this capacity to be more malleable to different dimensions. So what that could look like, because I was like, well, what does that look like? Like, can you give me an example? He's showing me an astral travel, for example. You could go to sleep. You know your body is asleep, but you are so incredibly aware in that sort of theta state, in that astral state, that for you, your experience in that astral state is very, very tangible and tactile. So you would be able to touch, feel, eat, um, experience elements and such, wind, rain, water, locations with a tactile nature, even though your physical 3D body is still here. That's the kind of capacity that we're moving into, which I think is fascinating. So fascinating. And I've had a couple experiences of that. In a kind of limited degree, I would love to have way more of those. So I can see where he's going, excuse me, where he's going with it. It's a really neat evolution of our capacity. And again, he's bringing me to 20 years. He's like, think about 20 years from now, it's going to be significantly different. He's showing me like 20 years from now, we could technically have a beautiful astral visit with a friend in the tropics if we want. So we won't be as limited to time and space in our bodies as we are right now, which is really neat. He said it just has to do with higher dimensional consciousness and the vibrational frequency of your body. And he said last year was about bringing the body online, and that's absolutely what has been happening and will continue to happen to bring us all into this new sort of wave of the future. And so he's laughing a little bit because he's like, I can see your mind starting to pick up speed now and want to ask me all these different questions and timelines and dates. And he's like, that's not how it works. And I get it. I get it. So I'll rein myself in. Let me see if there's one more question here that I can ask him. Okay, now being a medium, of course, I deal a lot with death and transition. So I'm asking him if there's anything that will be different with death moving forward, because I think there has been such a deep trauma with death. Not so much from the spirit side of it, because 9 times out of 10, when I talk to spirits on the other side, they are peaceful and they didn't experience the harsh way in which they passed. Again, I'm generalizing here, but it's more the suffering that happens for those that remain here. The trauma that is, if somebody passes from a really heavy accident, a really horrific accident, it's the people here that learn the way in which they passed and what happened to their physical body that are more traumatized than the person that had that experience because they popped out of their body before it happened, right? So my question is there going to be a shift on the understanding of death or the perception of it so there's less suffering at the time in which we lose somebody? That's my question. So just hold on. Okay, so he says, absolutely yes. And it's already beginning. Again, everyone's in a different phase though, so I really want to honor everyone's phase because grief is just so incredibly unique and individual in this human experience. So I really want to start by saying that. What he's saying though is he's like, as our consciousness increases, as we begin to understand the multidimensionality of our beings, we will start to truly see it as a transition versus a death. We will see it as a transitional state. We will also start to see our lifetime here as a transitional state, a time in which we are embodied here. However, our capacity to communicate in those higher realms will increase. So we will be able to continue to communicate with those loved ones. Mediumship will not be as much of an anomaly as maybe it is right now, although there's so many more people awakening to their mediumship abilities. But he's saying the higher the consciousness, the less the suffering. And so our perception of death will definitely change. We will start to understand, not just be told something. It's different when you're told something versus when you understand something, right? We can be told, yes, the soul carries on and it's just the body that passes away and it's just transition. We can be told that. But it's different when you understand that, right? And I can say from my experience with my NDE, beyond the fact of being a medium before, my NDE really showed me that understanding of, yes, it is a transition. It is just a transition. And we are completely us when we cross to that other side. And it's so fast in general. And so more and more people will begin to awaken to that understanding so that it becomes the norm, so that it becomes sort of a celebrated event, an energetic event, a beautiful kind of transformation from one state of being to another that is deeply honored. The same way in which we deeply honor a new birth, right? We get the soul. We get the soul in a beautiful little body. So we celebrate that, right? The same thing happens on the other side, though. When the soul comes back, those on the other side, they celebrate it. I was celebrated when I crossed over. So beautifully, I was celebrated. And each and every one of you will be too, as well as your loved ones that have already crossed, are celebrated. They're received, they're loved, and it carries on. And it carries on into so much more. And when we start to embrace this lifetime as but a stepping stone in the whole journey, and that's not to diminish the value of this lifetime, but to actually add color to the vastness of who we are, it'll take away some of that experience of suffering. And like I said, we'll also be able to communicate with them more in that energetic state. So it'll be different. It'll be different and it'll transform. And again, it'll transform depending on the rate in which our consciousness is. And so my question to him was, so then in 20 years, if we look back at this, will we see a big change in that? Like, will we be like, okay, death is not that big of a deal? And I'm really kind of playing on that. But he's like, no, we can't say that that's in 20 years. It's different for each individual person. But the concept of understanding transformation will be available to those that are ready for it. Again, it's that whole flow versus force. It's fascinating. All right. Well, that's really neat. I'm so grateful to be able to share this conversation with you. It's a little bit about, a little example of how things go in my head when I'm connecting with spirit and the questions I ask and the way that they answer. And so I'm really grateful to be able to share with you. Grateful Shaham was able to come through and share these insights. And I hope you all enjoyed. I really do. I hope it helped give you something to ponder, even the things that maybe are like, I don't understand that concept. Let it sort of soak in a little bit, and in time it will make sense. Because I know from my own experience when I've had big awakening pieces where I'm like, I don't get it. If I give it some time, it starts to make sense. So I will leave that with all of you. Thank you so much as always for joining. I'm so grateful. And again, if you want to do a deep dive into ancient Egypt and the pyramids and what they found under the pyramids, plus some channeled messages from some beautiful beings then, I will be hosting Cosmic Consciousness this Wednesday, the 16th. And you can sign up at avalonspirit.com under Cosmic Consciousness. And I hope to see you there. So have a beautiful rest of your day, everyone. And I will see you next week.